Hi there, Renee Aste of Lowell, Massachusetts, and my favorite relationship mapping story from my St. Michael's project isn't really from my St. Michael's project. It wasn't an alum, it wasn't a prospect. Back in 2018 or 19, sometimes it's hard to remember what year it was, but I was coming out of the 7 a.m. Sunday Mass, and the priest who was at the rectory at the time asked me, "Are you a nurse?" And I said, "No." Well, there was an unhoused or homeless man living behind the rectory, apparently. And I said, his problem is really an identity problem, as if he fell off the grid, because he was having a mental health issue, and the type of mental health issue that would require inpatient services. So even if you fed, clothed, and housed the individual, he still needed mental health services very in an immediate manner. And I said, I can help you. I can find his identity. So we knew his name. And I knew his brother's name, who was a junior. So I knew the father's name. You see where I'm going with the relationship mapping here. By starting off, unfortunately, with this man's arrest records, where he was being arrested for trespassing throughout the city of Lowell. He was kind of like bouncing around, and we couldn't figure out why, because in the city of Lowell, we do have services for those who are experiencing mental health issues as well. But it was just getting bounced around. And he was constantly just finding himself trying to find a place to be. So I took that information, knowing the father's name, and I kind of worked backwards from his arrest records, from being arrested in Lowell several times. And I found out where he went to high school because he played football. So it's finding like his old football records in like the newspapers from like 20 years ago. And I sort of like had to go backwards before I could go forwards because he was completely off the grid. He had no sort of, plots to point to. So I had to actually go all the way to back when he was a teenager to kind of like move forward. And I found out where he lived and where he grew up in Greater Boston. So he's from the Boston area. And I tracked through obituaries um, where he wasn't even listed on his parents' obituaries because it was sort of a weird situation sometimes with families. But I was pretty sure this was his family, right? You're pretty sure, like, there's no other way this cannot be his family. And I found siblings through the obituaries. And so I go on Facebook and I'm trying to determine, the common name. The sister had a very more unique, like African American name, ethnic name. So I was like, pretty sure this is her. Sometimes you're like when you're doing prospect research, you're looking at somebody's Facebook profile and you're like, this her. It was like completely you. This man came from a very loving home. We could tell this man came from a loving home. He was the most, as one person said, he was the nicest homeless man you could ever meet, but he was just being bounced around. So I messaged the sister and I said, my name is Renee. I'm a parishioner here at St. Michael's here in Lowell, Massachusetts. Um, your brother is in need of help. It was like what we're asking is just a point of contact, the next of kin, somebody to be his advocate because we couldn't be his standing. Like people say, well, how come the Catholic Church can't help? Sometimes the Catholic Church needs to find the person who can stand in to be the guardian, to be the point of contact, the next of kin, somebody who had standing. And I left my cell phone number. And she immediately called me. Thank goodness, right? Like she immediately contacted me, and I got her in contact with the rectory. I don't know a lot of information of what did occur. What I do know, I was told Saturday when I was at religious ed with one of my kids, the priest came up to me and says, "We got him on an ambulance. We got him on an ambulance, and he's in a facility where he's getting stabilized because this man's care was not. It was more than being fed, housed, or clothed. It was quite literally this individual needed immediate care. And it's really hard when you don't have standing trying to help a stranger because when they're a stranger, they fall off the grid. and you have to make that stranger somebody who is known. And it felt good. That was one of my best relationship mapping prospect researcher stories. Um, I'm trying not to give out too many details because I want to respect the privacy, but I love that story. And this is my featured pin if you made it to the 5-minute mark. All right, everyone, take care.